good morning, and welcome back to the Channel Insights podcast, where we transform each conversation into actionable insights. I'm your host, Dinara, and today we are going to talk about the power of communication. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Andy Bounds, who helps large companies to sell more, communicate better, and lead with more impact. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dinara. It's lovely to be here.
Andy, I'll start probably with something that caught my eye on LinkedIn. I came across your very short video and I was so impressed. You really charmed me with your charisma, and hence I invited you to the show. Tell me, what is it that you do? And are you born with charisma, or we can nurture charisma inside ourselves?
So thank you. What I do is I help my companies be more successful by communicating better and selling better and so on. As far as charisma goes, thank you for the compliments. Charisma is something that we can build on and we can learn. There are certain people you watch them and go, oh, they naturally are so good at this sort of thing. I could never do. And there are some immortals who you look at and think, I can't be like that. But most of us can improve our game and come across in a way that other people really respond well to.
Oh, it's really reassuring that we can build on this. So great. So, Andy, I read your biography and you've been voted as the UK Sales Trainer of the Year. Tell me a little bit more about your career journey. Why communication is such a passion of yours?
So I'll do the exciting personal answer and then the boring corporate one. So the exciting personal one is a lot to do with my family background. My mother is blind. So when I was a small child learning how to speak, the person who taught me to speak can't see. So I became good at describing things. Now, when we talk to customers and colleagues and friends, they are blind to our point of view. And so we often don't know how to see the world through their lens. Well, I think I'm quite good at that, partly because of my blind mum, I think. But also that gave me a passion for it as well, Dinara. When I was a child, I would sometimes see someone explain something to mum. Mum wouldn't understand and she'd be embarrassed and the other person would be embarrassed. And as a child, I used to think, oh, if you just had explained it like this, you both would have been happy. And that's actually what I do in adult life. I talk to salespeople. If you just had said this, you and the customer would have loved it and you would have made the sale. Boss, if you just had explained it like this. And so my skills and my passion come from helping people get it right first time and say the right thing so it resonates with other people. The boring work stuff, I've written books on this. I've traveled the world doing it. I've helped some banks win multi-billion-pound deals with it. The normal corporate credentials, I've got some nice ones, but people are most interested in the fact that I have a blind mum.
That's interesting. It's really good to know. As they say, everything comes from childhood, and that's how it happens, I guess. So, you've worked in over 50 plus countries, and you are also an international keynote speaker. Tell me a little bit more about the communication styles you may need to overcome while dealing with different cultures, different languages. As you can hear, I'm not a native speaker, English native speaker myself. So this is something that interests me so much personally.
Thank you. So, any audience, whether it's a different culture or it's a different person, in the same family, we're all different and we always have to do some research to make sure we understand things. And the research could be quite big. So, for example, when I've worked in countries with a very different culture to the UK, I need to do more research to understand. And when I'm talking to people who are like me, it's a bit easier. But it's all a question of research. And I'm always interested by the right amount of research to do. I'm a big believer that you don't spend hours and hours and hours doing it, because if you aren't careful, you spend so much time researching, you don't do any work, So I don't want to do too much, but I do not want to do none. So I think we want to do somewhere between more than none and much too much. So when I first worked in the Far East, for example, I spent some time thinking, who do I know who has worked there or who has lived there or who has contacts there? And I spoke to my friends about it. But similarly, if I was going to do a keynote for someone in Liverpool, the city I live, I know Liverpool very well. I've lived here 30 years. But if I was going to do it for a major bank, I would go and speak to some of the audience at the break and say, what are the main challenges you face with communication? I'm going on stage in 20 minutes. What do you want me to tell you? You know, I would review some of the ways that leaders communicate with the teams beforehand. So it doesn't matter whether I'm going to China or I'm staying in Liverpool, you still have to ask questions beforehand.
And you still need to prepare, I guess, as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And so it leads me kind of nicely to another question. You know, when I moved to the UK in 2009 and started working in the corporate world within the culture, which was alien to me at the time, what I was very surprised about was that people in the UK tended to beat around the bush. They were not as direct as my culture, for example. So, what would your advice be for someone to adapt to different communication styles in terms of, again, culture and your background, I guess?
Okay. So after you've done some research and found out what the other person's like, you then need to structure your communication. And obviously, you're thinking, what am I going to say? How do I do it? Should it be in person, on the phone, on a Teams call? Should it be by WhatsApp? You know, all that stuff. And then we think, when is the best time to do it? So I'm going through the question words. Can you see? Who do I speak to? How do I do it? What do I say? So we think of all these things. Now, this sounds so obvious, but most people don't do this. They just fire out an email and wonder why they didn't get a reply. You know, they send a WhatsApp saying, I can't meet you on Friday, but don't offer an alternative and wonder why the other person was cross. So I know this stuff sounds obvious, but most people don't do it. Now, as far as messaging goes, any communication at all has a start, middle, and end. And there are certain rules about the start and middle and end. And so we can talk about these briefly now, Dinara, but if you want me to give you any more detail, I can. So the 3 words I would urge everyone to listen to is this. The key thing about a start, the word is engaging. So the start of any communication has to be engaging. Doesn't matter what the culture is, doesn't matter who you're talking to, you have to engage them. If you invite me to a meeting and the meeting is titled Catch Up, well, that's not very engaging, so I might not turn up to it. All right? If you send me an email called FYI, not opening it. Yeah. So I know it sounds obvious, but most people's titles aren't engaging. We can talk about how to make them so if you would like. The middle thing, the bulk of your communication, the key word is the word short. We want it to be as short as possible. That might be 5 slides. It might be 20 minutes. I don't mean 20 seconds or 5 words. It might be short, but if you can do it in 20 minutes, do it in 20 minutes. Don't make me sit there for an hour. And the third word is the end. And what you want with the end, the word is action. So we want communication to cause an action. Now, again, that sounds obvious, but how do most emails end? They should end with, Dinara, please can you do this action? And then I will do that action. That's how it should end. But most emails end with, if you got any questions, let me know. And then nobody does anything. Think of all the PowerPoint presentations you've seen. The final slide should say, next steps, please do this action. But most PowerPoints end with a slide saying, thank you for listening. All right. So the 3 words are the start, the middle, and end. It needs to be engaging. It needs to be short. And we need to end with an action, all of which sounds obvious, but most of which doesn't happen. Yeah. Thank you and my apologies.
Exactly. Okay, so it's interesting. You know, also, you are known for creating lasting impact. This is what you do, this is what you offer to the market. Can you please tell me a little bit more about your after theory? This is what I came across your website. What does it mean and what does it entail?
I'm so excited you talked about this. This is my favorite thing that I've ever created. So, I mean, like you're very creative. A lot of people are creative. My job is to try and create things to help people. You know, that's my job really. And afters is my favorite. So I'll explain what we mean. All I mean by afters is as simple as this. Nobody cares what you do or what you say. Not really. What they care about is why they are better off after it. So that's what we mean by afters. Why are people better off after it? So, for example, if I speak to a lawyer, she might tell me she's very good at law and she will argue my case for me in court and she's very dedicated and hardworking. But all I want is after that, I don't want to go to jail. Do you understand? So I don't want the lawyer. It's just I don't want to go to jail. When I see a tax accountant, I just don't want to pay as much tax after the tax account. I mean, hopefully legally, or I might go to jail again. So nobody wants what we do. They want why they're better off after it. So nobody wants me. They just want their sales to go up or their communication to be better, or they want their meetings to last 10 minutes instead of 60 minutes. So it's fairly devastating. I speak for a living, but nobody really cares what I speak about. They care what happens after it. Yeah.
Really? Okay. So, what if we apply this after theory effect? What would you recommend, like, let's say, seasoned sales professional to do during a 1 minute pitch, for example, like an
Okay.
elevator pitch?
So an elevator pitch. So two things with elevator pitches. Number one, it depends who's in the elevator with you. All right. So if I was in an elevator pitch with a salesperson, I would say, my job is to help salespeople sell more.
Mm-hmm.
If I was in the elevator with a leader who wanted to grow their company, I would say, I help leaders to grow their company. So the number one thing is change your elevator pitch for who you're in the elevator with, and you just use the afters they care about. So did you notice I did not say I'm a consultant or I deliver training or I coach people? I talked about what happens after me. So I help people sell more or I help leaders to grow their business. So rule number one with elevator pitch, it depends who's in the elevator with you. And rule number two, talk about the afters you cause. And I love that. I do not want to be introduced as Andy Bounds knows about communication. I want to be introduced as Andy Bounds will help you achieve a lot more quickly
Mm-hmm.
by changing how you communicate. So I see my job as being an afters causing thing. And so I don't put that on my business card, Dinara, but that's to be an afters causing thing, right? Well, I know you know a lot more about AI than I do, but AI is supposed to cause afters, right? It speeds things up, it makes things better. That's its job. So AI itself is just the vehicle. What matters is why we're better off after we've used it.
Now, Andy, you've said these two magical letters, AI. I'm compelled to ask you my next question. So,
Go on.
as you put it rightly, the Channel Insight podcast was created with the idea of understanding how AI helps us in our daily life, in our businesses, how it impacts our life. But let me gear my question towards communication. With the help of AI, what I've noticed again on our LinkedIn platform is that every single social posts seem to resemble one another. It's like the same emojis, and you can kind of feel it. You see, it's not a human being who has written this post. Do you have any insights as to how we can either overcome it or how can we use AI towards our advantage so that we don't become all robotic and our communication comes across naturally?
Perfect. So, I'm really pleased you asked about AI. Let's be lovely and beautiful and open and honest with people listening to us here. When you first approached me to interview me, and I said, I don't know anything about AI at all, it's not my thing, right? So, I see that it actually helps my business because what's happening is everyone in the world wants to stand out and be different in some way. But because everyone's using the same stuff, they all begin to sound the same. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, so one of my customers said last year, are you worried about AI because it's going to take over your job? I said, no, it makes everyone sound the same. I think I'm more needed now.
Yes, exactly.
It's like when lockdown started with COVID, or as my children call it, stupid lockdown. So when stupid lockdown started, again, because I used to speak at conferences and that was my only job, and a lot of people said, do you think your business will struggle? And I went, no, I'm more needed now than ever because we can't meet face to face. So we need to know how to impress people when we aren't face to face and people can't see us. You know, well, I have a blind mum. I know how to communicate when people can't see you. So in answer to your AI question, I asked my children about AI because I knew we were talking today.
Yeah.
And they just all laughed because they just look at their stupid old dad who knows nothing. And one of them said, do you even know how to spell AI? So,
and what does it stand for?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think actionable insights. I like that one. So yeah, my strong advice would be, in answer to your question, if you are going to use anything, whether it's AI or you delegate writing your communications to someone else, or you're going to copy something from somewhere, you have to review it when the resource has helped you. You've got to review it before you send it. You've got to think about it. When I'm doing really important stuff, when I've created it, and I do it, I can't use AI, I don't know how to do it. I create it myself, and then I show it to 2 or 3 different people and say, how does this read? What are the main messages you're giving? Can you act on it? Is it interesting? Is it fun? So I will always get these things tested before I launch things out. So my advice would be, in answer to your question, if you are going to use AI, brilliant, fill your boots, but still remember to check it. Still remember to ask other people for feedback before you share it.
That's really, really powerful. Yeah, and very helpful as well. Andy, you have really and stellar testimonials and reviews about the work you've done. So I want to read out one particular testimonial which I found quite hilarious. It said, the only problem with having Andy speak at one of your events is that somebody has to speak after him. So tell me, what would you advise me that you ruin other people's speaking slots? What is the magic and unique approach you have?
Well, I mean, that was very nice feedback. I didn't have to pay them, but it was very nice to see. When you are speaking, there's various things that you should work on. Number one is the afters, like why will people be better off after you? You know, so focus on giving value to everyone there. I said before about communication having start, middle, and end, and we mean engaging, short, and action. Those rules are still the same if you're speaking to lots of people. Let's talk about the start. When you are speaking any communication, this matters, but on a conference keynote, it is essential. Your opening sentence has to be exceptional because it's your first impression. So I remember the first time I had an audience of over 1,000. My previous biggest audience had been 250. And then I was invited to speak at an event with 1,500. That's quite scary if you're used to a smaller size, right? So I worked out my opening sentence, and it was going to be, good morning, everyone. I have a question for you. That was going to be my opening. And once I had got my opening sentence, Dinara, I must have practiced saying it about 1,000 times. I said it again and again, and I said it with different levels of energy and moving my hands and all this stuff. And I practiced walking on stage fast and then walking on stage slow. So my opening sentence was immaculate. I had practiced it. I knew it was going to be good. And I remember to this day exactly how I said it, going on stage and saying, good morning, everyone. I've got a question for you. And 1,500 people lent in to hear what the question was. And I thought, oh, we'll be all right now. Yeah, because your start is disproportionately important. So you have to start well. You have to practice it. You have to deliver afters. I also like things that I know my audiences will find fun. So I'll sometimes give them something funny to look at on a slide, or I'll ask them to do a fun exercise with their neighbor for 30 seconds. So all that sort of stuff, really. The final thing to say about a keynote, it comes from the word keynote. There should be one main message. Yeah. And so when you're doing a conference, don't try and shove loads of stuff in because people think this is like a university lecture, you know? Yes. You just want to say your one message is this, right? So for me, my one message is communication has got to be engaging, short, and action. And so if I was doing a keynote on that, I would say that message in lots of different ways and make it fun and make it interactive and have loads of exercises. But ultimately, when I finish, people would go, engage, short, action, engage, short, action. So that will be my main message.
Great. I think I'll use this structure as well for being a podcaster because, I'm quite new on this journey as well. And I was inspired to create this podcast because I'm in awe of Oprah Winfrey. So my ambition is to become Oprah Winfrey of AI with this podcast. So
I mean, what a great elevator pitch. I'm the Oprah Winfrey of AI. I go, what do you mean by that? And we're now talking. I love it.
exactly. And I think when you ask question, I have a question for you. Yes, they probably don't care what the question is about. You already captured the audience
Yeah.
attention. Yeah, great. No, great idea. So I want to ask you a question about your books. You are the best-selling author of 3 books: The Jelly Effect, The Snowball Effect, and Top Dog. So what is the target audience for these books? What are they teaching us, and why should we buy them?
Okay, thank you. So, well, I'll talk about the afters of each one, shall I? So, why will you be better off after the first one, the jelly effect? That was written for people who are maybe they have their own business or they are working in sales and they're probably quite new to this. And what the afters are, it will help you have more confidence and more skills to win more business. There's a chapter on how to go networking, on how to sell, on how to make a good presentation, so useful stuff. The snowball effect, the idea is if you get better and better, you become like a snowball and you become unstoppable. And whereas the first book, Jelly, has a few big chapters, this has lots of tiny chapters. So if you want to send an email to get a reply, if you want to have a meeting that's effective, if you want to do a PowerPoint presentation that's interesting, if you want to save time in a weekly meeting, if you want to persuade your children to tidy the bedroom, if you want to get a pay rise from your boss. So all the chapters are like 3 pages long and it's just very quick wins. Yeah. So the afters of that are more success more quickly. And the final one, Top Dog, that is for people who are having meetings with important people. Like it might be a salesperson talking to a scary big customer. It might be someone who's recently been promoted and they're now talking to executives for the first time. So the thrust of this book is when you're talking to top dogs, they don't want you to be grateful. It's very easy to say, thank you for your time. I'll try not to take too long. Here are some slides you haven't asked for. Yeah, but these important people, they don't want you to be grateful. They want you to be useful. So you're better off saying, I've been looking forward to our meeting. You want to export into France. I have some new ideas for you. They'll go, what are they? And now you're. So Top Dog is about if you're speaking to scary people, how you can elevate yourself so you bring value to them. So I guess if you're quite new to this, Jelly Effect. If you're doing okay, but you want to get faster, Snowball Effect. And if you're talking to scary people, then Top Dog will help you.
You've changed my mindset completely because when I reached out to you, I said I look forward to speaking to you. Now I'm wondering, how should I effectively close the podcast so that it sounds more engaging?
Yeah, just don't thank me for my time. That's okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You know what we haven't covered actually is the importance of sense of humor in the communication. Do you think it's important to introduce the sense of humor, seeing that sense of humor can be very cultural as well, and you have to be very careful how you use jokes?
You do. The 2 main words with humor is what you've just said, very careful, because it's very polarizing. If it goes well, it's beautiful. And if it goes badly, it is devastating. So, an answer to a question you didn't ask, but the question I always say with communication is how can I become interesting? So, if you think of 10 different ways to be interesting, humor is one, but also so is asking questions, and so is telling stories, using anecdotes, and having a bit of fun. And. So, rather than say, should we use humor or not? My preferred question is, how can we be interesting and then you choose some of that. So you might choose humor, or you might choose asking questions, or you might choose doing a fun exercise, or you might put your team in pairs to have a chat with their neighbor about something. So they use humor if you feel comfortable, but if you don't, use something else. But please make sure you're interesting. Again, that sounds so obvious, but how many times do we go to a presentation? No humor, no questions, boring slides, and then you see the presenter say, you won't be able to read this, and you think, but what? Why have you done slides that I can't read? That's just stupid. So, yes, humor is fine, but it's not your only option.
Yeah. And your charisma shines through the screen, and I can only imagine how lucky some people can be to be part of your keynote speech.
Thank you.
So I've got a final challenge for you. What is the best way to close the podcast? Because I prepared something like, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, but I think it's quite boring.
I don't think it's boring. I think it's beautiful. I mean, I always like to end with an action. So if anyone's listening to this and they want some more free advice from me, I post things on LinkedIn all the time. My name's just Andy Bounds, so search my name. You'll see I post things every day. That's why we're talking, right? Because you found me. I also have a website, andybounds.com. There's loads of free resources on that. I think there's about 150 videos. You can register for my free weekly stuff. So if anybody wants more stuff, I just believe in abundance. I just share my stuff. I don't hold anything back. So have a look at that. But I mean, I've just really enjoyed this conversation. I truly hope that other people have as well. I know quite a bit about this. You can tell I have passion coming out of my ears about it. So if I can help anyone who's listening to that, please just send me a note through LinkedIn. I'd be happy to take anyone's questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome.
So, and let's close on this positive note. And I will definitely go after this podcast and order your books. I think I need the snowball effect. How to ask your boss to raise your salary effectively.
Yeah, I think that's the one. That's the chapter most people read first, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All the best. Thank you. Bye bye.